Happy Halloween, everybody! I'm Ghost Boy, and today I'm talking about 10 more Halloween-themed horror movies. But this time, I'm switching things up a bit. Firstly, I'll only be talking about movie sequels, specifically the second movies in a film franchise. And secondly, I'll be talking about 7 R-rated horror movies, and I'll also be discussing 3 family-friendly Halloween horror movies. None of these movies are in any kind of order, but number 1 is definitely my favorite. Now with all that being said, let's begin our list. The House's October Built 2. Recovering from the trauma of being kidnapped last Halloween, 5 friends head back out on the road to visit more haunted attractions. But when signs of the blue skeleton start appearing again, a new nightmare begins. So let me explain a little bit about the first movie. A bunch of friends are traveling all over the country trying to find the scariest and most extreme haunted attractions ever, but they end up actually getting stalked by a group called the Blue Skeleton, and it becomes unclear if the group is really just trying to give the friends an extreme scare, or if they're actually homicidal maniacs. These movies are really fun because you get to see the characters experience the thrills and chills of going to haunted houses and getting scared shitless. This is a great spooky movie that will fill you with fear and adrenaline. Just beware of the Blue Skeleton. Halloween Town 2. Kalabar's Revenge. An angry warlock has stolen a magic spellbook and plans to turn everyone into whatever costume they're wearing at midnight on Halloween. It's a race against time to get the book back and save humans from a permanent nightmare. Halloween Town is probably the best Disney Channel original movie of all time. And surprisingly, the sequel is actually really good. I love the relationship between Marnie and her grandma. They have such great chemistry and are such lovable, relatable characters. This is a very nostalgic, cheesy, fun movie with a lot of love put into it. And it will, without a doubt, get you into the Halloween spirit. So if you want to watch a spooky, fun Halloween movie with your family and friends, then I recommend Halloween Town 2, Kalabar's Revenge. The Barn, Part 2. On Halloween, a group of sorority sisters plan a charity event fundraiser by making a haunted funhouse inside of an old deserted barn. But little do they know that the barn is cursed and haunted by the Halloween demons of hell. This is an 80s, 90s throwback retro horror B-movie, old school slasher, with lots of over-the-top gore, very violent kills, and a great rock and roll soundtrack. My favorite part of both of the Barn films is the awesome, unique, creative, creepy, badass monster designs and creature effects. There's a scarecrow with candy corn teeth, a flaming-headed pumpkin monster, a ghoulish, demonic coal miner, a terrifying monstrous crow creature, and a horrifying mutant pig man. These movies are truly a love letter to old-school slasher films. They're fun, entertaining, bloody, and covered in Halloween atmosphere. If you like old-school slashers filled with creepy creatures, then watch The Barn, and make it a double feature. Hocus Pocus 2. After 3 young women accidentally bring back the Sanderson sisters to modern-day Salem, they must figure out how to stop the wicked witches from wreaking havoc on the world. I think everyone knows Hocus Pocus is one of the best, most iconic Halloween movies of all time. And I'm not gonna lie, before I saw this movie, I was really nervous and worried that it was gonna suck. But I was so shocked when I did watch this, and I'm very happy to say it was definitely worth the wait. My mom and little sister actually liked it more than the original. In this movie, we get some backstory for the Sanderson sisters and get to see the origin of how they got their powers, and I thought that was really cool. And of course, the best part of this movie is the return of Sarah Jessica Parker, Bette Midler, and Kathy Najimy. They are really the heart and soul of these movies, and they are just as delightful, hilarious, and entertaining as they were 30 years ago. This is a fun, hilarious, spooky, Halloween-y movie with a very positive message about the importance of friends and family. So this Halloween, light your candles and pour some witch's brew, then sit back and watch Hocus Pocus 2. 1031, Part 2. Join hostess Malvolia, the Queen of Screams, as she celebrates this year's Halloween Horror Marathon with 5 new tales of terror. There's 5 different stories in this movie, and I really enjoyed 3 of them. The other 2 weren't terrible or anything, but I thought they were kind of confusing, so I'm just going to talk about the 3 stories that I really enjoyed. The first story is about a girl babysitting on Halloween night. She hears mysterious noises coming from the basement, and finds someone, or something, chained up down there. The second story is about an Uber driver giving a ride to a suspicious, possibly supernatural man with sinister intentions. And the third story, and my overall favorite, is about a girl who is unknowingly being stalked by a variety of different killers. Overall, this is a very bloody, creepy, lurid movie, perfect for watching in the spooky season. Goosebumps 2: Haunted Halloween. While 2 best friends are cleaning out an old house, they open a book that unleashes an evil talking dummy and an army of monsters that invade their town. Now the 2 best friends must work together to save their home and get all of the monsters back into the book before it's too late. Both of these films have an amazing cast. And something really funny in both Goosebumps movies is there's an ongoing joke about R.L. Stine thinking he's better than Stephen King. And when all of the monsters come alive after getting released from his book, there's a scene where there's a red balloon sticking out of a sewer drain, and R.L. Stine points to it and says, "I came up with that first." There's also an awesome reference to Halloween 3: Season of the Witch, because the 3 main characters in this movie dress up as a pumpkin, a skeleton, and a witch, just like the 3 masks from Season of the Witch. But the best part of this movie is just how extremely Halloween-y it is. I mean, just look at the poster, there's Halloween decorations everywhere. This is a fun, entertaining, adventurous movie, dripping in Halloween atmosphere and filled with awesome references. If you want to watch a fun, spooky movie that you've never seen, then I recommend watching Goosebumps 2: Haunted Halloween. Hell House LLC 2: The Abaddon Hotel. 8 years after a hotel's tragic opening, an investigative journalist is convinced evidence remains in the abandoned hotel. She assembles a team to help her break into the building to find the truth and shed light on the mystery, but things take a turn for the worst when they get trapped inside the hotel. So if you haven't seen the first movie, it's basically about a group of friends who make a haunted house attraction inside of an abandoned hotel, but it turns out the hotel is actually haunted for real, and spoiler alert, people end up dying. So in this movie, a group of people go back to the hotel, looking for clues, answers, or evidence to find out what really happened to those people who died years ago. And not so surprisingly, things do not go well, to say the least. The Hell House movies are honestly some of the scariest horror movies I've ever seen, and some of the best found footage horror movies to come out in years. Overall, I don't think this is better than the original, but it's a pretty damn good sequel, with great scares, a spooky setting, and a very intriguing mystery. This is probably the scariest movie on my list. If you're like me and love found footage horror movies, then I highly recommend checking out the Hell House LLC film series. All Hallows Eve 2. Alone on Halloween, a young woman finds a VHS tape on her doorstep. As she watches the tape, she witnesses a collection of gruesome tales, each more terrifying than the last. So yes, this is a sequel to All Hallows Eve, but this movie does not feature Art the Clown, and really isn't anything like the first film. Now I'm going to talk about the actual anthology stories. But since there's 8 different stories, I'm only going to talk about my 4 favorites. Jack Attack. This story is about a kid and his babysitter carving pumpkins on Halloween, and things take an unexpected turn for the worst. I don't want to spoil the story, but I will say I think about this every year when I carve pumpkins, and it's very unsettling to say the least. The Last Halloween. This one is about a group of kids trick-or-treating in a post-apocalyptic world. This story is pretty simple, but the cinematography is great, and it has some very impressive, incredibly creepy monsters. Mr. Tricker's Treat. This story is about a serial killer decorating his front yard for Halloween, and people keep bothering him, so he kills them and uses their bodies in his Halloween display. This one is definitely more funny than scary, but it's very unique and pretty twisted. The Descent. A woman witnesses her friend get murdered, and 6 weeks later gets trapped in an elevator with the killer. This story is very intense and suspenseful, and has a very spine-chilling twist at the end. I don't know why exactly, but I have a soft spot for this movie. I know it's not perfect, but I love it anyways. If you love Halloween anthologies like I do, then you should definitely watch All Hallows Eve 2. Terrifier 2. After being resurrected by a sinister entity, Art the Clown returns to Miles County to terrorize a teenage girl and her younger brother on Halloween night. It's funny to see how much Art the Clown has evolved over the years. The first movie was an anthology. The second movie was just a straight-up slasher. And this movie is a slasher mixed with some supernatural paranormal elements. This is probably the most gory, gruesome, disgusting, bloody horror movie I've ever seen. And the whole film is just gushing Halloween atmosphere. This movie is filled with treats and tricks, and enough blood and gore to make you sick. So when Halloween time rolls around, you should watch Terrifier 2, starring Art the Clown. And now, the number one best Halloween horror movie on my list is Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Almost 2 years after narrowly escaping death at the hands of Michael Myers, Laurie Strode is at her breaking point and pushed to the edge when Dr. Samuel Loomis reveals that she's Michael's sister. Little does she know, the unstoppable killer is back in Haddonfield, driven by visions of their dead mother, and determined to bring about a bloody family reunion. Now I know this is one of the top 3 most hated films in the whole Halloween franchise, but honestly, it's one of my top 3 favorites of the whole franchise. The first 20 minutes of this movie is a fake-out dream sequence that makes you think the whole film will be copying the original Halloween 2, and Michael comes after Laurie at the hospital to finish what he started. But like I said, it all ends up being a dream sequence, but even though it's not real, it's still extremely badass, intense, and suspenseful. It's pouring down rain, thunderstorming, and the hospital is very eerily lit, as Michael comes in and just starts murdering everyone in his path trying to get to Laurie. It's one of the best openings in the entire franchise. The main reason I love this sequel so much though is because it's so unique. More often than not, all of the Halloween films fall into a pretty predictable formulaic plot. But this movie does something that hasn't been done before for all 3 of the main characters. Michael Myers is living in the middle of nowhere, surviving in the wilderness, stealing what he needs to survive, and living off of animals. He also becomes more violent, aggressive, and animalistic than he's ever been. Rob Zombie basically turned Michael Myers into a badass Viking. His hair hasn't been cut, so it's extremely long, and he doesn't wear his mask for a majority of this movie. So most of the time, he wears a coat with the hood up, and his long ragged hair covers his face. But when he does wear his mask, he looks more badass than ever. His mask is so old, worn, and faded, and actually starts falling apart after someone rips it. So pretty much half of his face is covered by the mask, and half of his face is revealed. And as for Laurie Strode, this is probably the most unique and original storyline she's ever had since John Carpenter's original Halloween. But what I find so interesting about Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 is that it takes place about 2 years after Laurie's first encounter with Michael. So she's still a young adult and still trying to deal with everything she went through in the first film. Michael murdered her parents and her friends and tried to kill her, and we get to see how badly she's been affected by that, but without skipping 20 or 40 years into the future, because it's only been around 2 years since the first movie took place. And I think that's such a genius direction to take the franchise in, because it's something we've never seen, it's something that's never been done before. Something random I love about this movie is for Halloween, Laurie and her friends all dress up as characters from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and Laurie just so happens to dress up as my favorite character, Magenta. This movie also has great visuals and cinematography. The whole thing just looks so dark and gloomy and grim. This movie is just absolutely gorgeous and filled with dark gothic visuals. Plus, the soundtrack is fucking beautiful. Overall, I honestly just love everything about this movie. It's a morbidly beautiful masterpiece, and one of the best horror movies to watch around Halloween. Well everybody, that's the end of my list. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you watched some of these delightful, frightful movies. And I hope you all have a wickedly wonderful Halloween. Until next time, remember, always be prepared to get scared.